So women need satisfaction because it's that feeling inside of them that lets them know that they're living in alignment with the right thing for them. We're feeling based. That's one of the great superpowers of femininity. But the foundation of that satisfaction cannot happen until you have these four keys in place.
Right.
Safety, security, trust. And then the last piece is to be cherished by the masculine. So these are the four keys. They are essential for satisfaction, and that's really where everything starts for us.
What's interesting is that so many of the people that I'm connected with now, they recognize that we were always meant to be in some sort of a dynamic where we can do it together, right? Whether you have same-sex relationships and one is more embodied in a masculine or
Yeah.
feminine, but that polarity must be there. And we
Yes.
are not meant to do this alone, whether it's in partnership in that way or tribes or villages or that kind of a cultural impact. I'm starved for it. Hey there, welcome back to Fire and Soul, the space to deepen your divine alignment and further activate your inner awakening. And today we are going to be doing that. We're going to the depths of our emotions, our intuition, and everything and how it means to live as an embodied woman who's satisfied. I am so excited to introduce our next guest, Alanna Kaivalya, PhD. She's a best-selling author, educator, thought leader, and expert on mythology, spirituality, psychology, and women's empowerment. The author of Sacred Sound and Myths of the Asanas. She earned a doctorate in mythological studies with an emphasis in depth psychology from Pacific Graduate Institute and is the host of the Satisfied Woman podcast. She lives in LA, but she was once in Texas. We've kind of done a switcheroo. And what I'm really excited about too is that your publicist, Alanna, welcome to the show. Kim Corbin, I need to give her a shout out because Kim has introduced me to just the most beautiful guests, including my listeners and viewers are going to love this. Regina Meredith, Lee Harris, amongst many others. And so I feel like we're going to just in such beautiful company. And I also was feeling like I met a sister on the path. We've been through a lot these past couple of decades.
Absolutely.
I want to just drop in with what is alive and juicy in you in this moment as an embodied, satisfied woman?
I mean, I love I love the question, honestly, Michelle, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here today and to talk with your listeners about all of these things. Alive and juicy within me, I think it really starts with reclaiming my femininity and leaning into that, and perhaps a little sassy rejection of
Mm,
the dominant culture and the patriarchy and the idea of should. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I have cast off those very heavy irons and trying to live as much as I can in a more satisfied way and in a way that is in alignment with the desires of my soul, the whims of my emotions, and the yearning of my intuition. And that involves a lot day to day. And I know that that's a lofty answer, but that's really kind of the core of where I live from right now.
oh my gosh, I love it. A PhD who answers questions in loft. That's very much our language here. So
Yeah,
you're
of
you're in the
course.
perfect spot. I'd like to circle back to how not like your full origin story. I know that's awful when we get asked those open-ended. Where do you want me to start? I would love to connect the dots of you building up a really big,
Mhm.
very abundant,
Mhm.
say financially successful business known as Alanna K. And then that interesting bardo that you were in of like, what's next? There's got to be more. Just wherever you want to share on that and expand, that feels like a beautiful portal to drop into.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did come from a yoga and spirituality background. I was in that field for more than 2 decades and did a lot of really cool things. I was actually the first yoga teacher ever to have a podcast in 2005, and the first
Amazing.
yoga teacher to ever have a yoga teacher training online in 2015, way before it was cool. And I was very much raised and indoctrinated, as many women are in this culture, of yes, of course, I can do everything, I can have everything. And not only should I, but I should do it all by myself. I should do it all for myself and for everyone
Mm,
else too. And I should reach as much success as possible. And I feel like I
mm,
lived life on those terms, but it became an incredibly heavy burden. And despite the fact that from all external markers, I was really successful. My business was thriving. There was a period of time where I was married. I was living in New York City. I really had all of the things that most people would say, Alana, you're nailing life.
mhm.
But I was stressed out. I was filled with anxiety. I wasn't being authentic. I was doing the things every day that I was, thought I should do. I got so into running a very big business that it took me away from my creativity, the things that allowed me to actually build the business in the first place. Because I was wearing the heavy armor of the masculine, which I think is really at the crux of this problem, I ended up attracting a marriage and a man that did not align with what my soul needed. The marriage and the man, he was more on the feminine polarity, which
Mhm.
made me have to stay in the masculine polarity. Everything just became honestly very uncomfortable, very inauthentic, and it wasn't something I could carry on. And there was always this deep question within me of, what is going on here? I've been told I can do everything. I've been told I'm strong and powerful. Why don't I feel that?
Mm.
And so deep in my research, whether it be through my doctoral program or through my spirituality studies, I'd always really looked into and held on to this polarity idea of masculinity and femininity. And I loved teaching about it, even as a yoga and spiritual practitioner. I loved studying it through the mythology program and the depth psychology program at Pacifica. And a few years ago, something, and Michelle, I'm not sure I even know exactly what it was, but something in me said, I'm done.
Mm.
Like, I'm done with whatever this mess is, whatever this narrative is that says that I have to keep doing things this way, their way. I'm done.
Mm.
And I couldn't really shift without just blowing it all apart. So I divorced the wrong man. I sold the business in order to dive wholeheartedly into this work. And I started with writing the book and then have since built up a business and community around it and really a way of life around it. And coming to terms with the fact that just because society says we have to do things on these more masculine terms, doesn't mean that we have to. And I want to give us a different way. And I'm trying to live that way every day now.
Yeah, beautiful. You and I were talking before I hit record, and I want to expand on that in this particular
Yeah.
part of our conversation of like in the self-development, spirituality, new age space, which
Yeah.
I was a devoted student of and quite frankly raised on it. That's just what my parents knew. It's what I knew, and I was very
Yeah.
proud of that. And I think we ran in very similar circles in the LA realms when you would be there and teach workshops, et cetera, because I was
Mhm.
really into yoga. Of course, everyone in LA is,
Of
and all
course.
of that, right? So I'm like, I even think I went to one of your workshops. But anyway, and I was telling you, I had probably invested over $250,000 in self-development seminars and education, et cetera. And that was the premise and foundation of how I
Mhm.
built my now thriving. And I'm very, very satisfied in my business, but it took a lot to get here, and especially these
Yes.
past few years of awakening. So you got a sister on the path in my own language and until I embody your own language of the book. But we were discussing how, but even that, right? Think about the leaders in that space, they're all men.
Hmm.
And while I am forever grateful and have a deep bow in my heart and in my soul for what I learned in those quote unquote rooms, it was like I woke up one day and it was like, where are the women? Where are the embodied feminine women that she's fully in her power and speaking her truth and can sustain friendships and wealth and health and all the things, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd love to, yeah, hear wherever you feel called to pick up on that and deepen into it.
Sure, boy, there's so many threads to talk about there, honestly, because it was something that struck me deeply the entire time I was working in the yoga industry. And it is an industry,
Yeah.
it's very much this, I always thought of it as kind of a square peg into a round hole because it's an Eastern tradition, which has its own type of psychology, dropped into a Western world, which has a very different type of psychology. And we've monetized it, we've made it our own, and we're trying to embody principles that at their heart and at their core were originally developed by men for men, and at that, really privileged men. These were for the upper castes of upper echelons of society, not the everyday people. So, to think that we can meditate our way through problems when we as women don't have the luxury, the time. We're here supporting everyone else in our world. We are the emotional regulators of our families and spaces isn't really practical. And I was mentioning before you hit record that I spent 10 years religiously meditating 20 minutes twice a day because I thought I should. And that's how you get to enlightenment and that's how you awaken on the path. Only 10 years later to realize that I was still just as confused, hurt, and angry as when I started.
Hmm.
That this meditation practice, as it was taught, was a very conscious practice. And where all of our emotional depth and intuition as feminine women lives is in the unconscious. And
Hmm.
that just wasn't something anybody was talking about or touching. And we have to also recognize that this industry, being kind of dropped in square peg round hole into this monetized, commodified space of the West that is dominated by a patriarchal culture, right or wrong, it just is, even though 80 to 90% of the practitioners of that space are women, we're still centering and elevating the men.
Mm. Yeah.
So that to me doesn't speak of the work. That to me speaks of the culture. And as a woman herself who, look, I've published books, I built courses and classes, I taught workshops, I created teacher trainings for some of the biggest studios in the country, in the world. And even still, I was having to bow to men.
Mm.
That was cultural. That wasn't, I don't think, reflective of my own work or awakening. And I certainly wouldn't think it's reflective of any other woman's work or awakening, but rather just the culture that we live in, which honestly, Michelle, it was not built for us. It was not built with us in mind. Luckily, we live in a time and a place where that is starting to change. And that's kind of why I'm here pushing it forward as much as I can and hopefully opening up that box for all of us.
Yeah, beautiful. I heard you on another podcast as I was excitedly prepping for this conversation, and I heard you reference David Data's work, The Way of
Oh,
the
yeah.
Superior Man,
Yep.
and how that was a bit of an inspiration, but in its own sort of way. So I'd love for you to share a little about that.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, even during all of my yoga stuff, I was really intensely researching and studying this idea of masculine and feminine polarity because it's at the heart of most spiritual traditions. Most spiritual traditions have this idea that built within the psyche are these polarities, no matter what you call them. I call them masculinity and femininity. That's what I'm comfortable with. And men have been doing this work for a long time. There are amazing men's work communities doing this work in a very organized way, centering masculinity, because I will say really clearly that the patriarchy wasn't built for them either.
Mhm.
It was based on masculine principles, but it doesn't do it well, and it doesn't center healthy masculinity. So everybody's getting short shrift here. And David Dada was really at the forefront of centering men's work and calling it out as a thing that men needed to do. And he wrote his book, The Way of the Superior Man, I think at this point, 35 something maybe years ago. Now, I read it many years ago, and as I was reading it, obviously, as a woman, I was trying to translate what might be for us or for me because that book didn't exist. And so when I was writing mine, I thought, well, women need a way of the superior man for them, which is why I titled it The Way of the Satisfied Woman.
Yeah, and I imagine that our listeners and viewers have some context with some David Data, because who doesn't? Or his protege, John
Yeah,
Wineland,
of
right? Who's
course.
right? Okay, yeah, who's actually coming on the show soon. So that's
Oh,
kind of a
cool.
fun thing, yeah, to connect those two dots. Um, I want to move into what is your interpretation of satisfied, and then, of course,
Mm.
the four keys of satisfaction. But I'm also really curious, as you were clear that you needed to exit out what was overwhelming, that was stressful, that was anxious, that had you at maximum burnout. And then you began writing this book while also earning your doctorate, which is incredible. What else did you begin to weave into your life that would allow you to actually tap into the unconscious where your feminine really resides?
Oh,
Like
that's an
what
interesting
does that
question.
look like?
So I actually earned my doctorate far before this book.
Ah,
So yeah, the
okay.
doctorate was I got that in 2015, I believe, and I started writing the book in 2022.
Okay.
Okay. Um, really writing it in 2023 and 2024. I mean, it's been kind of an evolution and process for a little while. Um, it's funny. I'm interested in what your listeners might think because some of the things that I'm working with and challenging, they can be triggering for people. We've lived with assumptions and in this culture for so long, and there is a sense of like, I'm doing it, it works for me.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. So here's the honest truth.
Okay, yes.
I decided that I needed to do this, and I really couldn't pivot my previous life. It just had to go. It was too entrenched, too rooted, too already established. So I burned it to the ground. Again, like I said, I divorced the man, and I decided to sell the business to recreate something that was really fundamentally at its core what I wanted it to be.
Mm,
And through the selling of the business, obviously, there was some money there to help me float a little bit so that I could focus on my creativity. Because creativity for the feminine needs to happen without pressure. You can't
mhm,
force creativity. You need to have a safe space for that. And interestingly, a huge part of that safe space was created by the right masculine partner. Finding the
mm,
right masculine counterpart to hold me in my feminine and hold me in
mm,
that creativity so
mm,
that I could have the space to be creative, so that I
mm,
didn't have to hold all of the pieces and parts of life by
mhm.
myself, because frankly, it is exhausting.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, this world wasn't built for us. And so, for the single woman in her own life to not only have to hold creativity, pleasure, joy, satisfaction, but also safety, providership, security, all of the things, it's a lot.
Mhm.
And it can be overwhelming. So, I
I
was
know.
very
I live
lucky.
it. I live it.
Yeah.
I'm the sole provider of a household, and I totally get it. So, this partner came into your life with the healthy masculine,
Mhm.
right at divine timing. I mean,
Yes, for
and for
sure.
those women that are listening or watching that are not in partnership, what do you have to say for them?
Stay open.
Yeah.
Stay open. Look, I have absolutely no rules or regulations around how women partner, if they partner, whether they want to partner. I think being single or partnered, all of it is available to us, and thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we live in a time and a place where we can make those decisions, because even my grandmother did not have that choice.
Hmm.
So I'm grateful for that. I'm certainly not recommending, I'm certainly not like, you need a man. I'm not on that bandwagon.
Hmm.
But I will say that we are human, and humans have evolved in relationship. We are relational beings. Whether we have that right now or want that right now or not, our psyche, our biology, our DNA, our evolutionary scope and trajectory, we've gotten here because of relationship. And a core tenet of psychology is that we are wounded in relationship and we are healed in relationship. So, as a person who's also very deeply rooted and interested in things like awakening and
Hmm.
self-development and
Hmm.
growth, there is only so far we can take ourselves. And we will at some point need that mirror of relationship to go even further, whether that's a short-term mirror, a long-term mirror, whatever the mirror looks like. So just stay open. Wherever you're at in your life, if you're single, no problem, but just stay open to finding that mirror and that partnership that can take some of the pressure off of you and really allow you to drop more fully into the feminine.
This is good because this is great, Alana. No, really, because it's
Good.
the triggering part that you were concerned about. I think you're more in alignment with our audience than you realize. And that's the thing that I believe many of us have been awakening to is that this we were sold on that we can do it all, which is
Yeah.
exactly what your book is the antithesis of, right?
Yes.
Shining a light on it with compassion, but honesty, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we were all programmed into the patriarchy that no longer serves, who we are as a collective and how we
Mhm.
are all evolving.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is that so many of the people that I'm connected with now, it's like they recognize that, yeah, like we were always meant to be in some sort of a dynamic where we can do it together, right? And that's whether you have same-sex relationships and one is more embodied in a masculine or
Yeah.
feminine, but that polarity must be there. And we
Yes.
are not meant to do this alone, whether it's in partnership in that way or tribes or villages or that kind of a cultural impact. It is, I'm starved for it, right? It's what I
Absolutely.
moved to Austin for because it's what I wanted, like-hearted, like-minded. It was a particular consciousness that was really magnetizing me here. And I was actually really, really right about that. But
Nice.
literally, what I was just saying, this is so good, is because like yesterday morning, I was on the phone with my best friend who's happily married and wants nothing more than that for me, right? And she's got that traditional, but we wouldn't call it traditional. We just call it this is that really healthy partnership, right? He
Yeah.
provides, he protects, he creates all that safety for her. She gets to create, and it's incredible, And I just said, this is the next piece for me
Hmm.
absolutely need to be open and I want to be open. So we literally did a prayer and we called it and it's like, why not create this right now between like two powerful women?
Absolutely.
Create anything. And so I know there are a lot of people listening. It's like, wait, I know she's not saying I'm not satisfied unless I'm in partnership. We're just saying that it's a whole different definition of what having it all really means.
Well, I think the patriarchy is tricky
Yeah.
because I do love having grown up with the notion that of course I can do and be whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Again, because
Hmm.
even my mother on that level didn't have that opportunity. So we're in a very unique time and place. But the trick is that when you say that to a woman, when you say, yeah, you can do everything yourself, you can do everything on your own, what she ends up doing is not just everything for herself, but everything for everyone else around her as well.
Hmm.
And so that leads to burnout and exhaustion, which again diminishes us, disempowers us, makes us less effective. And it's part of the trick. It's part of how they keep the feminine disempowered. The other part that's really tricky about the patriarchy, and again, it doesn't serve anybody, is this real emphasis on doing it yourself.
Hmm.
We prize people who can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, not ask for any help, do everything on their own, do it their own way. But we're not individuals. We're relational beings.
Hmm.
And when we're trying to do everything by ourselves and we're isolating ourselves from others,
Hmm.
it's again one more way that we are controlled by the dominant culture. I mean, think about the way that cult members or cult leaders begin. They isolate their members from their network in order to be able to control them.
Hmm.
So think of the patriarchy as sort of a grand cult in that way. And there you have it. We can still have success. We can still have everything we want. But if we do it from a different point of view, it's going to be so much more fulfilling.
Let's talk about that different point of view
Yeah.
because I was like, wait, it can't be that simple when you said, here's what satisfaction means. Let's start there. And then the
Yeah.
four keys to satisfaction, which when you look at the reviews on Amazon for your book, I mean, everybody's raving about these four keys. So
Mhm.
we're probably going to give a little away though.
No, I'm here and happy to give it all
Okay,
away.
cool.
And I
Oh,
want all the
amazing.
women to know about the four keys. It's not a secret. It's not meant to be a
Oh, good,
secret.
good, good.
So yeah, again, I was trying to be very thoughtful in the creation of this book, and like I said, I juxtaposed it with the way of the superior man. So
Yes,
when I found the word satisfaction and I read the definition, I was floored. I was like, this is
yes,
it. So
yes.
let me define it because I think this is really powerful.
Hmm.
So satisfaction is defined as the pleasure derived from the fulfillment of your wishes and needs.
Mm,
Now, needs are something that every human on the planet needs to have met. We just need to have our needs met. And whether
hmm.
we're meeting them ourselves, we're helping others get their needs met, that's fundamental, got to happen. Wishes are what bring meaning to life. Joseph Campbell would famously say that life has no meaning other than that which you bring to it. So
Hmm.
that's what wishes do. So when we think about legacy, when we think about enjoyment, when we think about leading a really fulfilled life, wishes have to come true.
Hmm.
So then the middle piece, that fulfillment. Okay, fulfillment is holistic. Our culture wants success, but success is linear. Success is often at all costs. Success is sometimes to the detriment of others, and success is often very alone.
Hmm.
Fulfillment is holistic. Fulfillment is evolving. Fulfillment is like a daily check in. Fulfillment is based on feeling. And so when we say satisfaction is the pleasure derived from the fulfillment of your wishes and needs, it's not to the detriment of everybody else. It's inclusive of everybody else. And that feeling of pleasure, nothing does pleasure like the feminine. And girl, you know what I mean. When you
Hmm.
feel pleasure of any kind, physical, sensual, relational, communal, any kind of pleasure, you're lit up from the inside with what it is that makes you a woman, and that is your life force.
Yes.
Women are the harbingers of life force. When
Yeah.
it radiates from your cells, when you can feel it dancing within you, that's pleasure. And
Yes.
that's a feeling. So women need satisfaction because it's that feeling inside of them that lets them know that they're living in alignment with the right thing for them. It's a
Mm.
feeling. We're feeling based. That's one of the great superpowers of femininity. So to be a satisfied woman is to have this pleasure of the fulfillment of your wishes and needs, but the foundation of that pleasure, satisfaction, all of this cannot happen. You cannot even begin to inch your way toward it until you have these four keys in place,
All right.
right? So the four keys, ready?
Yes.
Okay. The four keys are safety, number
Hmm.
one, which means to be free from harm in your body, mind, and heart. Now, just that can be difficult for some women to achieve.
Hmm.
Okay, so safety. Security is to know that you have all of your essential needs met. I don't even mean basic. I don't just want food on your table and a roof over your head. I want the things that make you feel like you're living a life. Maybe it's, I'm looking at my little dog here. Maybe it's your little puppy. Maybe it's, beautiful colors on the walls. I don't care what it is. You get to determine your needs, but your security depends on them.
Hmm.
Trust. Now, this is two part. All of these have both sides, right? Whether you're doing them for yourself or whether you're having help outside. So, trust for yourself means to trust your intuition and your emotions, not your logical mind. We'll leave that to the masculine. For you, you need to trust your intuition and emotions. And we have been told for far too long that our emotions are dangerous and our intuition is not important. So, there are many women who don't center them and don't even listen to it. But you can't trust yourself unless you're listening. And then the last piece is to be cherished by the masculine. Now, if you're alone doing it by yourself, that means that you allow your own inner masculine, primarily rooted in your logic and reason, to be in service to your intuition and your emotions. Not to override it, not to talk yourself out of things, not to second guess yourself. But when you get that emotional hit or that intuitive hit, you work that problem and you work it out, not
Mm.
the other way around. So these are the four keys. They are essential for satisfaction, and that's really where everything starts for us.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I was really feeling into it because I feel like I've done such a deep, deep, deep shamanic journey into self-connection,
Mm-hmm.
self-intimacy, self-love
Mm-hmm.
these past few years, and there's just rings absolutely true. So I want to say thank you for that. I also know that I work with quite a few women myself, and I've come across a number of them who they've never had an intuitive thought, or they're really trying to distinguish between still fear and intuition. And I
Right.
have my ideas of what that is, but obviously I would love to hear anything that you would like to offer around that. Just kind of like a starting point of, because you mentioned intuition and then you wrap that last key, that third key with listening. And I don't know if anyone heard that, but that's a huge piece. So I want to like just deep into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you think about it, masculine and feminine, we all have them. They're psychological energies. And they are in conversation. If we're talking about just us as individuals, that conversation is happening on the inside. But if we can externalize it just for the metaphor for a moment, if you as a feminine woman are in conversation with, let's say, an overbearing masculine person
Hmm.
and they don't listen to you, how does that feel?
Yeah.
Not great. So if you're doing that to yourself, it's almost a sense of self-betrayal.
Hmm.
And so the listening to the feminine on the inside is what's going to help you to foster the kind of relationships on the outside that also listen to your feminine. The feminine needs to be heard. Its voice has been silenced for far too long, and I would challenge every listener who thinks that they haven't had an intuitive hit or that they don't have intuition. That is just not true. You are human. You have it. I don't care how you identify. I don't care what your gender is. If you are a human in a body, you have intuition. For the feminine woman, it's going to be the strongest calibrated piece of who you are. If it's not
Yes.
coming forth, if it's not coming forth, it's not because you don't have it, it's because the listening isn't there.
Yes.
So it's about the listening, it's about the feeling into it, the not being afraid of it, the not believing that patriarchal age-old wisdom that your intuition makes you a witch and witches get
Mm.
burned at the stake.
Mm.
It's not about listening to this dominant narrative of only science, only logic, only reason are valid. Sorry, that's just not true. Your intuition, I often liken it to a canary in the coal mine, if you know that metaphor. So coal miners used to take, I hate this story, but it makes sense. Coal miners used to take a little canary in a cage down into the mine with them because those little delicate lungs are so sensitive. And if the air was toxic, they would notice first because the canary dies.
Hmm.
And then they would realize it's also toxic for them. They need to get out.
Mhm.
So your intuition is like your little canary in the coal mine. It's going to let you know when things aren't right, when there is a sense of discomfort. And that's your first sign that things need to change. So I'm a sailor, Michelle. I have a lovely sailboat and I like to sail to Catalina. And anybody who's sailed knows that you can't go in a straight line to your destination. You have to kind of go back and forth, which is not the masculine way. The masculine likes to turn on his powerboat full charge and go straight to the island. The feminine works with nature. The feminine is receptive to the wind shifts. The feminine is receptive to the movement of the ocean, and even with the plan, can course correct and still get to the destination safely. This is your course correction, but it's also everyone else's course correction. If the masculine doesn't listen, they're going to end up on the wrong island.
Mhm.
Everyone has to listen to the intuition because it's the first place that signifies something's not right here. We can make it better.
Yeah. The listening is key. That was the biggest practice that came to me over these last few years, and what I've also noticed, and I'll just share what I've ended up talking to with so many different women is they don't know how to listen because they haven't slowed it down enough to be still and quiet enough. So there's the meditation practice, right, on one level, but
Yeah.
it's also just being so accustomed to being plugged into the busyness, to the distraction, to the just never just learning how to get still and even be able to discern like what is my intuition and like what is the feminine really saying and what is my emotional depth? What are my feelings, right? And so if there's anything that you would want to expand on that,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to hear your words.
For sure. So the feminine is embodied. Okay.
Hmm.
So we are very much in our bodies. And again, you actually, I want to encourage your listeners, you don't have to do anything. I'm not giving you more to do. I know how overwhelmed you are. It's already there. I promise.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
for women, your intuition is going to feel like something. Okay. It's just going to feel like something. And the more that you recognize what that feeling is, and the more you trust it, the more
Yes.
you listen to it, the stronger and more quickly it will arise for you. And it's again, it's a conversation. The more you listen, the more you respond, the more it will say yes or no or maybe, whatever it's trying to tell you. And so that feeling will be different. And I do a nice little practice with my women oftentimes where I just put them in a quick little scenario where they close their eyes and say, okay, think about a time where you ignored your intuition or you were being overridden by something or people didn't listen to you, and tell me what that felt like, you know, and put your hands on your body wherever you felt that. And many women will have their hand on their chest. It feels like a crushing pressure, or it feels like my guts have just dropped, or it feels like my throat is tightening up. That feeling, that's your clear no.
Mhm.
It doesn't even take that long. Again, because I know y'all are busy. You know, and
That's good.
I don't need you to sit for 20 minutes and meditate. I just need you to pay attention to your body. And when that
Hmm.
feeling comes up and you listen and you course correct, you're good. And then we'll do the opposite exercise. All right, where think about a time in your life where you were listened to
Hmm.
or you went in the direction that you knew you were supposed to go, even though it might have been countercultural or counterintuitive. And what did that feel like? And my most favorite answer for one of my coaching clients was she says, "Oh my gosh, I feel like a butterfly. Like
Yeah.
wings have just sprouted from the back of my head, and there I go, I take off." And I said, "Okay, that spark, that butterfly feeling, that is your clear yes. You got your clear yes and your clear no. That's all you need. That's all you need. All day long, clear yes, clear no, and then heeding it. The hard part isn't listening. The hard part is the doing, the following through."
It is so, so true. It's like cultivating the courage and the discipline to honor
Yes.
that divine directive because I feel
Yes.
this is just me. And I don't know if you resonate with this, but that intuition, it's from the divine realm,
Of
and I
course.
believe that that is available to anyone to download
Yeah.
and so, yeah, okay, so yeah, I imagine that you were on the same page on that, but it's like, gosh, sometimes you're like, really? But it's still it has that sensation of the butterfly just taking
Yeah.
flight, and it's like, okay, that was Austin coming here.
I
It
love
was,
that.
oh, it took 3 years to finally
Yeah.
cultivate the courage to make the move. And then once I got here, I was like, oh, right. And then there was like a whole other initiation. And so that's just the way that it goes. It doesn't mean that like you're done forever. Kind of like the satisfied woman, right? Like I imagine there's like different depths, right? I wouldn't say levels, but depths. It's like, okay, it's like you get to the one part where you're finally like attuning to your intuition and you're listening to your emotional depth and you're cultivating these four keys and life is flowing and it's humming in a different harmonic way than it ever had in the past. But then I imagine just like your own example, like it gets deeper. And it gets deeper. And then your relational field gets deeper. And like, that's the part that excites me, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is why we're talking, is because I was available for what you had to bring, and we could meet here and share in this. And now we have this beautiful ripple effect for whomever is willing to attune to what we're really bringing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everything, hopefully it's a deepening, right? Hopefully
Yeah.
it's a deepening because we're growing and evolving. And I remember some of the wisdom from yoga and spirituality would say that as soon as you start to do the work, life doesn't get easier. It actually gets harder because you realize what you've been ignoring this whole time. You realize what
Exactly.
you've glossed over this whole time. You
Yeah.
realize what you've second guessed, what you've put off, what you've said
Mm.
yes to when you should have said no or the opposite.
Mhm.
And so it becomes a practice. It really does. And look, it is going to be jarring, not just for you, but for everybody around you who is used to you just picking up the slack, acquiescing, being dismissed, all of that. When you start to really rise into your feminine power, it's going to take a minute and bravery is required. And trust me, I understand how scary that is, especially because women historically have been punished for being brave. And I don't
Mhm.
mean that lightly.
Mhm.
So it's not just a brave step or a courageous step. It can, for some of us, be on some levels a dangerous step.
Yeah.
So any moves that we're willing to that we're willing to walk in this direction, I honor. Any way in which we can lean into this sense of satisfaction, I'm applauding and cheering you on. And I am conscious of the fact that I'm writing this book and presenting this work at a time where we're not yet 100% with our footing and our sense of equality in this world. We're still fighting for it. There's still a lot of work to do on everybody's part. And so it's like this has got to be a team effort. We all have to band together and figure out how many of these four keys can we get for ourselves? How much satisfaction can we lean into? Where can we create more safety for women everywhere? How do we create more trust within ourselves, within our partners? It's a big experiment right now.
The self-trust is so key.
Yeah.
You know, the honoring that you just so graciously offered our audience, I want to also take a moment to honor you because you mentioned at the top of the call that you burned it all down. And that
Yeah.
obviously sounds like a very masculine move, but it was also incredibly courageous. You had to call on your inner masculine for that. Let's be clear.
Actually, I would
What?
say the opposite.
Oh, tell us more then. Yes.
Yes. Yes, I would say the opposite because, we think about destruction as masculine.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
feminine.
Thank you for clarifying that
You're
because when you talked about
welcome.
burning it all down, I was like, oh, she was in her Kali? Like, what's happening here?
She was in her Kali.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
That's
So, the masculine. So again, I like sailing metaphors because I'm a sailor. The
yes.
masculine, I always think of the masculine as the prow of the ship.
Hmm.
And I can even imagine my beloved masculine partner. He likes to stand at the prow of the ship as it
Hmm.
cuts through the water, and he's like,
Hmm.
"All right, here we go. We're going in
Hmm.
a direction.
Hmm.
We're forcing our way through this nature, this pathway. But I'm gonna get you there, baby. I'm gonna get
Hmm.
you there."
Hmm.
And I'm back there on the tiller, like hanging out, watching the sails, testing the wind. And I'm like, "Nope, babe, we got to go right a little bit." And he's like, "But wait, we were doing so well in this." No, no, we have to. We have to change. The masculine will plow forward no matter what at all costs. And it's brave for doing that. And in a healthy masculine representation, sometimes that's the right way to go. I'm not saying that's the incorrect pathway,
Hmm.
but death, destruction, that's feminine, girl. Shakespeare famously wrote that women are both the womb and the tomb. My mother would
Hmm.
famously say, I brought you into this world, I can take you out.
There's the death and the rebirth. Yes, it's
Yeah,
all portal of life is through a woman. It is obviously deeply feminine. Yeah, thank you. Duh.
you're welcome.
That moment though, when you're
Yeah,
like, I can't do this a moment longer. Had you met your beloved yet?
no,
Okay. Can you walk us through just that Bardo period, right? Where like, because I imagine we have an audience that's 40s, 50s predominantly
yeah.
women and have had a lot of success, but are like, ooh, I want to make a shift.
Hmm.
I'm very curious about the stage of, or that season of the book wasn't written yet. You knew something else needed to come through. people would look at you like, what have you done? Like you said, it can be very
They
threatening
still
to
look at me like that.
our social circles, right? Like, who are you? I know I've gone through so many deaths, like infinite deaths, right? It just
Yeah.
the last 3, 4 years, like it's like I always say, if we haven't talked in a month, I'm gonna have to reintroduce myself, right?
Oh, that's a great thing to say. I like that.
Yeah. And so, but that moment, because you'd built up, a decade-long, very successful business. We're
Hmm.
going through your exit, didn't really know exactly what was coming next, but like knowing the feminine was driving that feminine power, what was your reclamation process like?
You know, I kind of wish it had a better story or like a moment, like I was in my bedroom and the ceiling opened up and the
No.
gods shined down. I did have that moment when I went to grad school, actually. I had that ceiling open up, gods shined down. I clicked a button and there was the page for the program I was supposed to go to. So I have had those
Mm,
moments. This wasn't quite like that. This was an increasing sense of discomfort. And
yes.
so I often identify, and my favorite chapter in the book, by the way, chapter 3, it's called Permission to Disrupt,
Oh.
identifies that discomfort as something incredibly important for the feminine. We feel
Mm,
discomfort first. And what's great about that is that that's our sign that things need to change. And as women, unfortunately, we are comfortable in the discomfort. We are comfortable with the change. Our bodies are built for it. Think about our cycles every 28 days and how
yeah.
difficult and challenging and transitioning constantly that is. So this is something that we do. Now, I was suffering through an increasing sense of discomfort because I just knew that what was happening in my life wasn't right and it didn't suit me. And I felt compressed. And like I said,
Mm,
one of the big signs was that I wasn't able to be creative. So the
mhm,
last book I wrote before this was in 2015, the year I graduated with my PhD. Now, those were fertile, abundant years for me. I was deeply into creativity. I was learning, I was writing, I was expressing, I was building my first online courses, I was teaching the things that I love to do the most. And then I got into doing the business, and all that
mhm,
got sucked away. So I was
mhm,
so far into my masculine
mm,
that it became inauthentic, and that inauthenticity was deeply uncomfortable. So I knew that I needed to get out. And I said that I hadn't met my partner yet. I knew that I needed to get out, and then I met my partner.
mm.
And even though I knew I needed to get out, I didn't know how. I mean, the business was called Alanna K. How am I going to get out of a business that's my name?
Mm,
Like the whole, like I'm on every video. I've got 1,000 hours worth of training. Like, how do I extract myself from something that is literally me? And he
mhm,
just looked at me one day and he goes, Alana, you are suffering so much because of your business. I can see you hate it. I can see it drains you. Why don't you just sell it? And I was like, oh, I could just sell it? Like it didn't even occur to me.
mm,
So he mentioned it, and then I
mm,
was like, that's what I'm doing. And 3 months later, it was on the market. 2 months later, it was gone.
mm,
So it was just the mention. Like he didn't make me do it. He didn't help me do it. He just opened up the box. And that's why relationship is so important to get that externalization, the mirror from a
mhm,
different perspective of what life could be, because I couldn't think of it by myself. I knew
mm,
I needed it. But then the externalization gave me just the spark I needed to get to the finish line in that regard. And after that, honestly, Michelle, I had no idea what the F I was doing, and it's all been faith from there. What I
mm.
did know was that whatever I was going to build had to be from my center.
Yes.
It had to be from me,
Yes.
you know?
Hmm. Oh, so yeah, I'm totally touched by that. I've been very tender today, like all day, just weaving and weeping with women, like all
Yeah,
day.
well,
So
that's what we do. That's how you know it's right.
yeah, what you just said, there's so much divine heat right there. You
Yeah.
talked about his reflection to you. That was in the fourth key of a satisfied woman. It was in his cherishing of
Yes.
you that
Yes.
he was like, babe, sell it. Drop the
Yes.
backpack. You don't have to
Yeah.
carry this load of rocks up, the mountain. And I'm like,
Exactly.
that's possible, and so I love that. And then you also said faith.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that if we are so burdened by a life that is deeply entrenched in the masculine overload, we don't even know what faith feels like. What does that look like? What do you mean faith?
I
And
can
so
tell you.
yes, please do, because this was just like This is where I live now too. It's total trust and surrender. I asked God to be my business partner 2 years ago.
Oh,
And
I love that.
it's,
Oh my
it's been the
God,
most
I love that.
easeful thing. Like, I'm like, oh, wait, is it supposed to be this easy? And it's like, it can be this easeful. It really can. How do we
I'm
teach
literally doing
that?
that
I
right
don't
now.
know. You are. Tell
Right
me
now,
more.
I'm literally asking God to be my business partner in this moment. That's like the best idea ever.
Yeah, it's
Just
so
happened. Thank you,
beautiful.
everybody.
You're welcome. I mean, listen, it came through. I was at my altar and I was with such
Yeah.
ancient sincerity, like, okay, I got some plans, I've got some dreams, and I want to shift things up. I was going wide, large, like 200-person masterminds, and I wanted to go deep and narrow. I wanted to serve
Yes.
only just a small, intimate container
Me too.
of
100%.
women and have
Yep.
real impact and like real connection and real
Yep.
community and sisterhood. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be really courageous, but can you please be my business partner? I mean, I was so damn sincere and I listened and I
Yeah.
felt like I got a really beautiful yes, but then it was on me to honor what that really would mean, right? So
Yeah.
yes, can you please share about what faith looks like for you right now?
I have the most simple, elegant definition of faith. You ready?
Yeah.
It's the opposite of fear.
So good.
I mean it.
Yes.
I mean it. The opposite of fear is not love. The
Mm,
opposite of fear is faith.
mm,
And when you are in a place of fear, it's contraction, it's tightening, it's going to take you away from all of the beautiful things that you want and can have in your
mm,
life. And to drop the fear means to be in faith. So, take it from any angle you want. Cultivate more faith, drop more fear. What, you want to be on like kind of the positive or negative scales. It doesn't matter. If you're feeling fear, there's a lack of faith. When you're feeling faith, there's a lack of fear.
yes.
So I had to, I do think looking back now, there was a great fear of who would I be
Mm,
if I'm not at the helm of this very successful business?
that's
How
right.
would the world look at me?
Mm,
What would I do with my day? Can I, at this later stage in my life, recreate an entire career from scratch?
mm,
Start from zero. When
mhm,
I've built up all of this, and look, I could have stayed. I mean, the business still runs, it's
mhm,
still doing its thing out in the world. But I was afraid of what would happen if I stayed, and I was afraid of what would happen if I left. But I
mm,
knew that staying was harder.
mhm.
So faith won.
Yeah, and here you are. So beautiful. I really, really feel you. I went through the same thing last year. It was spring of 24, and I had built my business on digital courses. I'm the woman
Mm,
who would teach you how to be fully self-expressed and sell with integrity and naturalness on live video and all of that. And it had also built up to a multiple seven-figure coaching business. And I was so damn proud because I did it all organically and all the things. And but last spring I could just tell I was like, this is not what I meant to teach anymore. And
right.
I've always known that it was the essence of the transformation inside these experiences that is
Yeah.
really what I'm here to do. But I didn't know that me, Michelle, could lead with that essence versus the
Mm,
packaging. Does that make sense? Yeah.
sure.
And
It
so,
does.
and then I was just like, all right, God, you know what I mean? Like once
Yeah.
again, like I'm trusting here. And this right here, I think is the essence of a satisfied woman because we have to learn how to embody those four keys ourselves because once we do, then we can also open up to inviting a partner in the most aligned partner or inviting our current partner to
Yes. Step up.
evolve, right? Step up, right? Like to
Yep.
level up. Like this is what I need, and this is my truth, and I'm obsessed with you, and I want to grow with you, right? And
Yeah.
from a point of satisfaction versus like I can't make her, right? Like
Yeah.
it changes games. So I would love to share in our last few minutes together. This conversation went nowhere where I thought it was going to go, and I'm so happy because it's so good. I had all these other thoughts I was we're going to go down, but get the book, y'all. Just get the book,
Get it?
and we'll link everything in the show notes, and then go visit Alanna and maybe go into her membership or something. But yeah, those conversations, because I have a lot of married women who are listening, a lot of women who are like, my husband's not necessarily on board yet.
Yeah.
Those, if you have a story of a client who can share or your own experience, okay, please, by all
I
means.
I do. And what's interesting is I'm on very much a similar kind of track, Michelle, right? I wrote the book. I knew that I couldn't give a linear idea of what a satisfied woman is because we're all unique and different.
Yes.
And I've dug into this work with this heart of listening. Like
Mm.
let the women tell me with I've got the structure, I've got the tools, I've got the know-how, I can get you there, but let the women tell me what they need.
Yes.
Because I didn't want to come into it. I came into it, my first business thinking that I knew what everybody needed. And let me just create it and here you go. And let me kind of shove it down your throat. So I'm doing a little bit differently, and I'm doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with women and just
Mm.
allowing them to come in like, look, I'm going to help you reclaim your femininity and embody that more and call the world to task to support you in your femininity. So what does that look like? And more I find women in marriages who are so unhappy.
Yeah.
I have a woman that I'm working with, coaching client. She's been in a marriage for 35 years.
Mm.
And she recently looked at her husband and she said, You're going to lose me,
Mm.
right? You're going to lose me. And now he's in a fear place.
Mm.
And I said, Okay, do you want to end this? And she said, I don't know. I said, Okay, well, let's explore that. Let's stay with the I don't know. And what we're going to do is have you really tap into your femininity because so much of it's nobody's fault. So much of our training and so much of our negative relationship experiences put us in the masculine.
Mm.
And if we as women get into our masculine, what can our partner do other than
Mm.
drop into his feminine?
Mm.
And everybody's in the wrong dynamic.
Mhm.
Everybody's uncomfortable. And I said to her, I said, look, I don't know after 35 years, I don't know how much evidence we have that he's capable and willing to step into the masculine. I don't even know that that is his natural polarity, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out because if you
Mhm.
hold your feminine post,
Mm.
there can be no other way for him to interact with you.
Mm.
So I've invited her to find little ways of like, okay, let him know to do something. She picked making me coffee in the morning.
Mm.
Say, honey, it would make me feel so loved and cared for if you would bring me coffee. And I said, just issue that, start with your feelings, issue that request, and then stop talking. Stop talking. And guess what? He's making her coffee every day.
Mm.
I have another client, she's been married 10 years, same thing. She's like, oh, this guy, he's a mess. I have to, go and pick up after him all day. He makes his things in the morning. I have to go clean the counter. I can't even get started with my work until the house is clean. And I said, wow, that's a lot of control.
Mhm.
Well, he won't do it. And I said, what
Mm.
happens if you just stopped doing it
Mhm.
for him, like his mom? Well, then it wouldn't get done. And I said, yes. And what's the worst that would happen? Well, then
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to cook dinner. And what's the worst that would happen? Well, I'd have to
Mm.
order Domino's. And I said, fine, get Domino's on speed dial.
Mhm.
I said, you're not doing it for him anymore. Stop helping your men.
Mm.
Stop helping your men because otherwise, what are they going to do? How will they step up and in for you? So there's a little bravery and a little risk required. We don't know often, especially in patterned long-term relationships, if they're capable or willing to step up and in, but you've got to create the space because femininity is receptivity. It's
Yes.
receptivity. It's
Yes.
us creating the space. I mean, think about our anatomy, Michelle.
Yeah. Mhm.
We receive,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
So when we get into that receptive space, when we create this receptivity, attitude, air, everything,
Mhm.
the universe hates a vacuum.
Mhm.
And what do men do with that space? Think of the biology.
Mhm.
They want to rush in and fill it.
Mhm.
So my one client, her husband is making coffee for her every morning, and they are going to couples therapy. He said, I want to do therapy with you.
Mm. Yeah.
And now
Beautiful.
they're planning their retirement in Peru. My
Mhm.
other client, guess what? He cleans the counter for her every morning, and he's making her something special by hand for her birthday.
Oh.
So when you call in, when you get into that receptivity, when you stop filling the space,
Mhm.
people step up and in. And this isn't just with husbands.
Mm.
This is with everyone else around you, but you've got to stop doing everything for everyone else at all times because it leads to burnout. It takes you out of your power zone. It disempowers you. It is an inauthentic way to live. It puts you in your masculine. It's all bad.
Mm.
So that receptivity place is key.
It's so key. Yeah. Oh, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. This was so wonderful. I am so glad that we opened it up and we just allowed for what wanted to flow through us. Look at what
Yeah.
I have like 5 pages of notes. I have a
Oh
phone
my
full of
God.
questions. And I didn't it's like it's just like it wasn't necessary. We just what was really alive, and that's so deeply feminine. It's just so
It
great.
really is. It really is. But I have to say, the academic in me is deeply curious about what your other questions were. I love
Um,
research. I love a lady who comes prepared. So thank you
well,
for doing that.
you are so welcome, but honestly, it just we covered all of it. It's like also I have one of those sort of like photographic memories, so it's like we were able to weave in ways where it didn't feel like you were being asked pointed questions. So we got it all in. Mainly, I just want to just honor you for really going first because that's what a leader is, and a feminine leader in these times. She's needed. And so thank you for burning it all down in the archetype of the goddess Kali and for being such a way shower in your feminine embodied satisfied woman energetic. It's beautiful to witness.
I'm definitely doing my best, and it is a practice every day. And it was a great honor and pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. One more thing though, where can we find more out about you?
Yeah, so easy peasy, thesatisfiedwoman.com. And everything really is there on my website. I have a free community for women. We're having conversations about all of this. I do live workshops inside of the free community. I do also have some private coaching for women as well, and a couple of online courses. And then there's always the book, The Way of the Satisfied Woman, which is available anywhere books are sold.
Beautiful. Okay, and we will be sure to link all of that in the show notes. Thank you
Cool.
again, Alana, for coming on
Oh,
the show.
one
Yes,
more fun thing, actually,
yes.
thesatisfiedwoman.com/empower me, and you get a
Mhm.
free starter kit to get on your way.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Yes.
excellent. We will also link that. So
Okay.
thank you so much again for taking the time to come on Fire and Soul.
Absolutely. Thank you.